The story of King Edward VII. King Edward VII, also known as the Uncle of Europe, spent most of his life as a playboy and member of high society. He was never able to live up to his mother, Queen Victoria's, high expectations. He would go on to rule as both the King of the United Kingdom and the Emperor of India. He was only required to perform ceremonial duties and enjoyed a life of leisure for the majority of his life due to his mother's protracted rule. He was well known for his love of fine food, fine wine, fashionable clothing, racing, gambling, and attractive women. Although his relationship with Germany's emperor, his nephew, was tumultuous, Edward VII was well liked in social and sporting circles and helped to strengthen England's ties with the rest of Europe. In preparation for World War I, his military and naval reforms were very effective. The modernization of the British monarchy and the improvement of ties to other European powers were both important accomplishments of Edward VII. In today's episode, we narrate the lavish life of playboy King Edward VII from his birth to his death. But before we continue, please don't forget to subscribe to Spectacular Biography and hit the notifications bell icon so you don't miss out on interesting stories and documentaries about the British monarchy. Early life. The future King Edward VII was born Albert Edward on November 9, 1841 to Prince Albert and Queen Victoria. Within the family, he was referred to as Bertie, and he underwent a rigorous training to get ready for the throne. Since he was the king's eldest son, Edward was also given the royal titles of Prince of Saxe-Coburg and Gotha and Duke of Saxony by his father. He was also automatically made Duke of Cornwall and Duke of Rothesay. A month after his birth, he was given the title of Prince of Wales, which is customarily given to the monarch's eldest son. From the beginning, Edward was prepared to rule. A group of tutors carried out Prince Albert's designed course of study. Edward was, at best, a mediocre student despite his intense focus. While in college, he did manage to get better grades. Prince Edward, in keeping with tradition for British royalty, attended Oxford and Cambridge universities before announcing his intention to join the military. In an effort to protect him for the throne, his mother rebuked that notion. Through honorary promotions earned during his brief military service, he reached the rank of lieutenant colonel. Personal life and children. From an early age, observers noted Edward's gift for charming people. That talent became apparent to him as he matured, most notably in his reputation as a playboy. During his time in the military, he openly had an affair with an actress, and this was just the first of many, much to the dismay of his parents. Victoria and Albert sent Edward abroad in 1861 to arrange a meeting between him and Princess Alexandra of Denmark, with whom they wanted to arrange a marriage. Alexandra and Edward got along okay. Prince Edward finally got married to Princess Alexandra of Denmark on March 10, 1863. 10 months later, Albert Victor, their first child, was born. 5 more siblings, including the future George V, were then born. Before his marriage, but after his engagement, Edward fell into a scandalous love affair with actress Nellie Clifton. His father, Prince Albert, was so outraged by the scandal that befell the royal family that he went to confront his son in person. Despite the fact that he ended the relationship, Albert became ill 2 weeks later and passed away from typhoid on December 14 of that same year. Queen Victoria experienced a severe depression and was unable to forgive Edward for causing her husband's death. Throughout his marriage, Edward kept having numerous affairs. Among his many liaisons were the actors Sarah Bernhardt and Lily Langtry, as well as Winston Churchill's mother Lady Randolph Churchill, and Alice Keppel, the great-grandmother of Camilla, the wife of King Charles III. Edward was permitted to represent Queen Victoria after she withdrew from public life, but was not given any authority in political matters. Although he was sworn in as the Duke of Cornwall, he had little to no administrative responsibilities. He consequently spent a lot of time in London's social scene, where he enjoyed eating, drinking, gambling, and developing a playboy reputation. The active heir apparent. Edward spent the majority of his life as an heir rather than a monarch due to his mother's infamously protracted reign. In this way, contemporary commentators frequently compare him to King Charles III. In spite of this, he was constantly moving. Though his mother prevented him from playing a significant role until the late 1890s, he was the first heir to carry out the formal public appearances that a modern royal is expected to make, such as ceremonies, openings, and other formal public appearances. He was the men's fashion leader at the time in a less official capacity. He frequently travelled for ceremonial purposes, but every now and then he accomplished something noteworthy. He visited India in 1875 and 1876, and because of his enormous success there, Parliament decided to confer Victoria with the additional title of Empress of India. A failed assassination attempt was made against him in 1900 while he was in Belgium, ostensibly in retaliation for the Second Boer War. His position as the monarchy's public face did make him a target on occasion. Queen Victoria passed away in 1901, ending a reign that lasted nearly 64 years, and Edward, who was then 60, took her place. His son George became the heir apparent upon his father's accession because his oldest son Albert had passed away a decade earlier. Coronation. The date of their coronation was set for June 26, 1902, and people from all over the world were invited. However, a few days earlier, the king experienced an appendicitis and got peritonitis. He would die unless the coronation was postponed, and he underwent surgery right away. Despite his adamant opposition, the king eventually agreed to a new date of August 9th. By that point, he had fully recovered, and the service went off without a hitch. The prayers were printed in large letters on card for the Canterbury Archbishop, who is nearly blind and aging, so that he can read them. Even so, he continued to misinterpret some of them. And when he finally crowned the king, he put the crown on the king's head the wrong way around after appearing to drop it. Crowned king, an effective leader emerges. When Queen Victoria passed away on January 22, 1901, all of this was altered. He jumped into his new role after ascending to the throne with vigour and enthusiasm, giving the monarchy its sparkle back. His amiable demeanour and outgoing personality quickly won over most of the British populace. Using his fluency in French and German, Edward travelled throughout Europe and met with important heads of state. The Triple Intent, which was crucial to ending World War I, was negotiated with his assistance. He was a key player in the military's reform after the Boer War from 1899 to 1902, pushing for the establishment of an army medical service and the construction of the modern dreadnought battleships. The Edwardian period from 1901 to 1910 was seen as the golden age for the upper class in Britain. Although the rigid British class system persisted, rapid industrialization increased economic opportunity, which opened the door for greater social mobility and consequently greater social change. Socialism gained popularity, the plight of the poor came to light, and there was a push for women's voting rights. In his own country, Edward was opposed for both efforts to redistribute wealth through taxes and the suffrage of women. Despite this, the majority of British citizens thought highly of him. A constitutional crisis unresolved. A constitutional crisis erupted in 1909 over the People's Budget, legislation that called for unprecedented taxes on the wealthy and radical social welfare initiatives. Premier Harold Asquith of the Liberal Party and his Chancellor, David Lloyd George, supported the budget. The Conservative Lords were privately urged by the King to pass the budget and prevent political dissent. Lloyd George suggested that the King add a lot of Liberal seats to the House of Lords to counterbalance the no votes in order to end the impasse. The King, however, objected and insisted that a general election be held to allow the people to vote on the matter. Up until the accession of Edward's son George to the throne as King George V, the problem remained unresolved. Death. A severe case of bronchitis developed in 1910 as a result of Edward VII's years of smoking more than 20 cigarettes per day. He briefly passed out while attending an official event in France, and on April 27, 1910, he arrived back in London. On the 5th of May, after coming back from a trip to Greece, his wife, Alexandra, called their children to inform them that their father was seriously ill. Edward had several heart attacks and eventually passed away on May 6. On May 20th, 1910, a large gathering of royals attended the burial of Edward VII at Windsor Castle. His legacy is characterized by praise for his amiable disposition and diplomatic skill, as well as criticism for his pursuit of self-indulgent pleasures. I hope you can learn some valuable lessons from the story of Playboy King Edward VII. You can drop suggestions on whose story you will like us to do next or watch similar interesting stories from the end screen above. Please don't forget to subscribe to Spectacular Biography to stay updated on our latest documentaries. Have a wonderful day.